Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show, KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. This show is made possible by the McPherson Group Tax Defense Attorneys. 1-800-BEAT-IRS, beatirs.com. That's BEAT IRS. Serving Alaskans, the nation since 78 with 2 generations of tax defense attorneys. We have with us investigative journalist Linda Royall. She's been on this program once before. She's worked in journalism, Christian media for more than 20 years. She's passionate about finding the truth and telling it. She has well-researched political exposés. We put some up on restoringliberty.com, and, of course, she also writes for thestream.org. And, of course, no stranger to talk radio. She has her master's degree in journalism from Georgetown and is slotted to receive her Ph.D. in research journalism from Regents University early this next year. Linda, thank you for joining us on the Joe Miller Show.
It's great to be here, Joe. Thank you for asking me.
Well, we were impressed with your article. Just came out. The federal government tried before to stop the trafficking of fetal remains and failed. Before we get into the details of that, of course, we've got a new Planned Parenthood expose video that came out yesterday. Your thoughts on that new video?
Well, actually, the gentleman whom I interviewed said something that was brought out in that video. He said, what we have come to is this. We now have infanticide. And that's what we were seeing in that video. That's what the young woman was discussing. They're killing babies that are born alive with beating hearts. And then they're dissecting them like the laboratory specimens they are in the eyes of those who do this. And, we've come to a point that I'm not sure there's any point of that we're not at the point of no return. I was a little discouraged after interviewing this person who was inside the legislature at the time all this occurred before in 2000. And I asked him, I said, why do you think that the public thought the problem had been resolved? And he said it's because the media quit covering it. He said we had, the one expose by 2020. We had, a few talk radio stations that covered it, and then it went away. And he said everybody assumed that it had been fixed, but the truth was it had died out in Congress, and it, within a month, because the focus was taken away from it by other matters and other things.
I run a conservative site, restoringliberty.com. At times it's been ranked in the top 50 conservative sites in the nation. It's the top conservative site in Alaska. And I've been hitting this issue of Planned Parenthood hard. I mean, ever since the videos came out, and they're grotesque. I mean, I know they're difficult to watch. I know that they're difficult to talk about. They're difficult to read about. But we've been pushing them, near the top of our article listing, and it surprises me. I mean, again today, looking at the stories that we have up, these stories about Planned Parenthood, and I think, you can see this on trending too, they don't even make the top 3 or 4 stories amongst the conservative press, and that is terrifying in my view.
Yes, it's really disconcerting. And those of us like you and myself and the people at stream.org and your organization and other, good conservative talk shows and publications, we keep pushing it every day with new information and what we're gaining. Something we've done at stream.org, and we're expecting results from this on the 24th, which is, I believe, Monday. We have filed a FOIA request with the federal government, with the National Health and Human Services Division. And what we're asking for is documentation of the written consent forms of the women who have said they are willing to have their babies used for experimentation. And we're also asking for the financial documents. If there was no, exchange of money, if these baby parts weren't sold, we want the proof of it. They've told us they do have some documents. Now, we don't know how many or what, but we have been told that they have documents that they will be submitting to us. Now, I did the same thing I did the same thing in 2009, when I investigated this before. And I asked for this same type of request, and I was told, yes, they had some documents. And, Joe, guess what I got? 6 pieces of paper. If every time there has been a consent, and if every time that there has been infant tissue taken into research, there has been a signed piece of paper, where are they? And I think that's our next big expose is there are no records. That's how it looks. And if there are no records, then the law has been broken.
Well, and you would think that there would be some attorneys out there that would take issue with this. It seems a good class action lawsuit could be lodged because there's obviously violations of rights that are going on. I mean, as atrocious as that sounds, that you've got to get mom's permission, to use body parts. But still, especially putting against, using all the leverage you can use to stop this, I would think that there would be somebody out there willing to do it.
Well, and I would imagine so. But, when I did this body of research in 2009, I interviewed people at Planned Parenthood all over the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia areas. And I also interviewed people at private abortion clinics. And this is what I was told by many of them, including the main abortion clinic for Planned Parenthood, which is 3 blocks from the White House. I was told by those people that they didn't ask the woman because if she has consented to the abortion, the remains of that abortion then but de facto belong to the abortion clinic. At that time in 2009, they weren't asking for permission. It was not part of the informed consent. They thought they didn't have to do it, and they were coached not to. I think what may have happened since then, Joe, back in 2000, when Dean Alberti exposed this in the first place, it was the same kind of scenario we're seeing today where tissue procurement companies were going into the abortion clinics and processing the tissue and purchasing it in a stage of raw material and processing and taking it out by their technicians. Okay, when they got caught doing that, the climate of it changed, the process changed. And for a while, the abortionists were processing the tissues and packaging it and making it available to a driver who would pick it up and take it to the forensic laboratory where the processing, the finer details of the processing would be completed. That's the way it was in 2009. They have reverted back to the way it was in 2000, according to the recent videos and the intel I have done in the private abortion clinic. Now they're doing it the other way, where the tissue collection places are coming and sending their techs in. And this is what has really caused the expose. These technicians are now speaking out like they did before.
And let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, this last video suggesting infanticide, how widespread do you think this really is?
I think it's taking place in every single abortion clinic all across the United States, and I think it has been taking place since 1993. When you talk to a Planned Parenthood facility in the greater D.C. area and you ask about an abortion past 22 weeks or 24 weeks, depending on the facility, they will refer you to the Washington, D.C. Women's Clinic. They do abortions from 24 to 48 weeks. If they can't handle the abortion, they refer you to abortionists in Maryland who really do terminations all the way up through the full term. And all of those people with whom I spoke at the time, they processed the fetal tissue, and they would separate it out into 2 or 3 different categories. And the intact fetuses, which they were paid really well to process, they would bag those separately and take great care with those. And, they would be put on dry ice.
And that's a motivation, right? I mean, they get higher dollars for an intact body of a baby that's been aborted. And so that's now motivating different techniques to achieve the higher revenue source from it, right?
Right, exactly. And the companies who process this tissue and resell it into the research industry, see, it stops at the middleman, which is not research. Those are for-profit corporations. They're corporate America doing this. In 1999, a baby brain sold for $999. This is in my article. In 2009, when I looked at the price list from these types of companies, a baby brain was selling anywhere from $2,500 to $2,900. That same baby brain today is selling for, I think it's $7,500. But this is the real kicker: the liver, because now since this, the past research I did, in today's world, they're able to take only a small piece of liver and do a transplant into an adult. So now a baby liver, a fetal liver, beyond 24 weeks is selling for $24,000.
And you had mentioned on the last show that this trade, in your estimation, amounted to, I think, hundreds of billions. Have you, I think that kind of expose is important for Americans to understand exactly how much of their economy not just the healthcare practice that's derived from this horrendous stuff, but how much the economy is actually impacted. What do you have a better number, or are you working to try to acquire basically the economic activity that's around this horrendous practice?
Absolutely. That's where I'm working right now, actually. I discovered in 2009 that it was an $85 billion industry. I read a report recently, and this was done about 3 years ago, and at that time they had assessed it as over $500 billion. But I think they're just looking at the research industry. They're not looking at private industry. And, of course, these middlemen are not researchers. They're not government-funded research facilities. They're private enterprises. So when we compound it with those numbers, I have no idea at this time. I'm still digging, and the rabbit hole keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. I don't know where it stops.
I appreciate you doing that. We've only got about a half a minute left. When you have a good assessment on that, or even a partial assessment, I'd love to get you back on the show to talk about it. I mean, the buying and selling of the bodies of these babies, horrendous. The impact economically, of course, significant. That's the driver here, and that's why this horrendous thing is going on. We've got to engage. If you go to joemiller.us, you're interested in stopping this, stopping the corporate sponsors of Planned Parenthood. Click on the Defund Planned Parenthood Now button. Get your form letter, send it in, do your part. Linda, I appreciate everything you're doing to stop it. We'll have you back on in the not-so-distant future.
Okay, thank you, Joe, and I appreciate you getting the word out there and keeping it out there also.
We'll keep it up. Stay with us. Joe Miller Show, right back after this news.